Well, hey, Math 8, welcome to the midweek feedback video here from May 4th through 8th. We're going to go over a few problems from Monday and Wednesday, as well as kind of give you just a heads up of maybe how to approach Friday if you're not sure how to get started. And then otherwise, just a reminder for these Monday and Wednesday questions, I'm going to go over some of the hardest ones statistically that you guys have struggled with so far. I know some of you guys haven't taken it yet, and that's okay. But remember, even if you have taken it, don't be afraid to go back and to redo some of these harder questions, right? You have multiple attempts. You can take this information, go back, take another attempt, get a higher score, and that's a higher score that goes into the grade book. So just a reminder to really take advantage of this opportunity if that helps you. All right, on to Monday's stuff. Here is number 8 from Monday 5-4. It says the Smithtown Town Library wanted to see what types of books were borrowed most often. And so we have to look at these 4 statements and figure out which of these statements here, the multiple choice, would be correct given the circle graph that they gave us. And so we're just going to take each statement at a time and see if it's true or not. So the first one, more children's books were borrowed than romance and science fiction combined. So let's look at children's. We got 26%. And then over here, we got romance and science fiction. If you add together 13 and 18, add those together, you're going to get 31%, which actually ends up being more than the 26%. So that is not a true statement. So we have to cross that off. And I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of all that drawing there. But we'll go ahead and cross off that first one. Okay, on to the second statement. It says more than half of the books borrowed were children's, mysteries, and art combined. So children's, mysteries, and art combined. If you add 26 plus 20, you get 46. Add another 4, you get 50%. So add those 3 together, you get 50%, which, is that more than half? I think to get more than half, you have to get more than 50%. So we are so close, but no cigar here, as they say. So we actually cannot say that that's correct. If we'd gotten 51%, we're in business, but here 50% wasn't quite enough to make that statement true. If they said half, it would have been correct, but it said more than half. All right, third statement here. More mysteries were borrowed than art and science fiction combined. So we got mysteries up here. There's 20. So let's see if that ends up being more than this other. So we got science fiction, art. You add the 18 and 4 together, you get 22%, which is not more than 20%. So in this case here, we have to cross that off here as well. So by process of elimination, we're going to hope this last one's correct, but let's check it. It says more than half of the books borrowed were romance, mysteries, and science fiction combined. So romance, mysteries, and science fiction combined. You do romance and science fiction. Remember, we got 31. Let's add the other 20 up there. So we end up getting a 51%. They said more than half. Remember what we said earlier? As long as we get 51% or more, we can say, yep, that's more than half. And so we would say here that that is the correct answer. All right, here is number 16 from Monday's assignment. It says the graph shows the tide levels during a 6-hour period at the beach. During which time period did the tide rise the greatest number of meters? So notice they said, when did the tide rise here the greatest number of meters? Now, if the tide is rising at a rate, what's the greatest rate that it's rising? Remember, we're thinking of that here as what is the greatest rate of change, right? That's what they're looking for here, right? What's the greatest rate of change here for the number of meters for the tide? Now, if you've taken 8th grade math here, the word that should be coming to your mind here when you think of rate of change here would be slope. So we want to know what is the greatest slope or the steepest slope. So let's look here at the graph. It goes down, it goes up some, but it looks like this period right here is where I would say it's going up the most. The incline there is steepest, and that would be between 12 and 1. And so that would be the correct answer on this one. All right, we're going to go on to Wednesday now. This is number 3 here. It says a veterinarian recorded the weights of animals in a histogram. Now, remember, a histogram is a little bit different. Just a really quick reminder of what a histogram is. Notice they didn't just give us individual numbers. They gave us classes or ranges or intervals of numbers. And they didn't tell me any of the exact data numbers here. They just told me the number of animals, it looks like over there, that fall within to each category or each range or interval of numbers. Like the first one, it says, looks like there's about 7 or so that fell into the range between 0 and 4.9. They could all be right at 4.9. They could all be right at 3. They could all be right at 0. But there were 7 animals that were somewhere in that range, and that's all they tell me. And so this question is asking what kind of question can we answer given this type of information? Because some of these we won't actually be able to answer, even though you would think maybe that we could, if we actually knew the numbers. But, we don't actually know the actual data numbers. We only know the amount of numbers or the amount of animals that fell into each class or interval of numbers. So here, like for example, how many animals weigh 4.9 pounds? I don't, all of these could be 4.9. The 7 that are in that category, they might all be 0 and none of them are 4.9. I don't know the exact values, so I can't answer that question, unfortunately. So we have to cross that one off here. Okay, let's look at the next one. How many animals weigh between 5 and 10 pounds? This one is really close. If you notice here, this group right here is 5 to 9.9, but that's not the same as being 5 to 10, right? If, for this question, they want to know between 5 and 10. And for this part, it would count if it hit right at 10. They would want us to count that in our tally. But up here, if it was at 10, it would be in this other group and not the one over there. So that's a problem. We're not going to have an accurate answer for them, unfortunately. It's pretty close, but unfortunately, no cigar, as they say, for this one as well. All right, how many animals weigh less than 8 pounds? If we had a group that went 0 to 8 and had a bar like that, and told us how many that was, we'd be in business. But unfortunately, if you notice here, it goes 0 to 4.9 and then 5 to 9.9. So unfortunately here, that's not going to cut it. All right, lastly, we'll hope this one's right. How many animals weigh at least 15 pounds? So that one I think we can do here. It starts at 15. This bar right there, and then it would include both of these bars here at the top because you want 15 or more, so 15 to the top of the data. So if you just add those together, so we don't actually have to do it, but it looks like, about 16 or 17 there? I think it's actually 16 here. And then looks like another 14 there. So if you were to add those together, it's basically, we could answer the question, right? We could say there's 50 animals that weigh at least 15 pounds. And so that's the type of question we can answer here with this histogram. Here's number 9 from Wednesday's assignment. It says the height of the 22 students in Beth's class are shown. And then it says Beth decides to create a histogram to display the data. She wants her histogram to have either 5 or 6 bars. That's the important part here. Remember, the bars would be the different classes or intervals or ranges that we have for the numbers, and they need to be equal sized, and ideally on a histogram, probably between 4 and 6. Here they say 5 and 6 bars, right? If we have more than 10, it would not be good at all. There'd just be too many bars going on there. If it was each man for himself, it'd just be way too many bars for each of the data values. And then if we only had 1 bar, then you can't really see anything. Of course, all the data fits into one big group. So we want ideally 5 or 6 groups as far as the bars on the histogram. And so let's figure out which size of interval. We have to keep equal sizes, would be good to use. So for example, the first one says 1 inch. So if I took, and I guess I have to look here and I have to look at the range. This is actually something important here as well. Notice it goes from 55 to 70. And so if you do just 50 or 70 minus 55, we're able to see here that there's a range, or the overall data basically spans 15. And so we need to, once again, divide 15 up into equal sizes, and they've given us some options. So let's test these out. So let's say the first one here, 15, let's say they're 1 inch bars. That means you're going to have 15 bars, but that's not 5 or 6, right? That's not going to help us here too much. So we're going to have to cross that one off. All right, so we got that one crossed off. Let's look at the next one here. Once again, looking for 5 or 6 bars. So let's do 15 divided by 3. That would give us 5. So right there, we've got an ideal option. So that's probably going to be it. Let's just look at 6 really quick just to see what it looks like. But if you start to do this, you're going to realize what that's about 2.5 or so. It's not quite exactly. Actually, it is. Yeah, it's 2.5. So once again, not the 5 or 6 bars we're looking for. So when you start getting onto those sizes, that's not going to work. So it looks like it would be those 3-inch bars here that would give you a total, or 3 inches, for the groups that would give you a total of 5 bars, which is what we want. All right, here is number 10 from Wednesday's assignment. So Jamie collected data on the amount of time his classmates spent on phone calls one day. The times ranges from 7 minutes to 116 minutes. He wants to make a histogram with 4 intervals. Which set of intervals is best for Jamie's histogram? And so remember, intervals have to be equal sized, and they have to come up against each other but not overlap. Okay, so let's see which options actually satisfy that. So looking at the first one, notice you have 0 through 30, but then you have 30 through 60. Notice how 30 belongs to both groups. That would be an example of overlapping, where if you had the number 30 itself, you wouldn't know, do I put it in the first bar or the second bar, right? It's not clear. And that's why we can't have overlap. So we have to reject that option. This next option looks a little better there. Oh, except look at there, 58 would be another example of something that overlaps. And so I noticed the same problem there, just looking across that one. Okay. The next one looks like it does a little better with that. So 0 through 39, then 40. That's a good, example of something that wouldn't overlap there. 40 through 69, then 70 through 99, 100 through 116. That seems a little bit better. But notice here, it looks like the sizes here. So this one is a size of 40 right there. This one, 40 through 69, almost to 70 there, that's a size of 30. Do you see how the sizes there are not consistent? And so we have to reject that one as well. Okay, so we're on to the last one here. 0 through 29, that's a size of 30. It doesn't overlap. Size of 30 to go from 30 to 59 doesn't overlap. 60 to 89 is the size of 30, and then so on and so forth. So it looks like we finally have our best option here. So it keeps consistent there in the middle with the size of 30, and it comes up against each other without overlapping. All right, the last one here for Wednesday's assignment is the very last question, question 12. In fact, there are 3 questions within this. I'm mostly going to focus on question 2 because that was definitely the one that hit us the hardest just as we were going through it so far here this week. So Marcy surveyed middle school students about the number of movies they saw during the summer break. She displayed the results in a histogram. So we've got a histogram here. They say how many students saw more than 10 movies during the break? What percentage of the students surveyed saw 10 through 14 movies during the break? How many students did Marcy survey altogether? Okay, so number one, of course, we don't spend too much time on it. It says how many students saw 10 or more during the break. 10 or more doesn't just mean 10 through 14. It also means all these other bigger or groups that are greater than that as well. So you would have to add 90 plus 70. So that's a 90 up there. You'd add 90 plus 70 plus, that looks like about 35 or so. And that should give you the answer there for that first blank. All right, but let's look at these, especially number 2 is the tricky one. So what percent of the students surveyed saw 10 through 14? So now we're actually looking at just this bar here. Okay, so how many, but it says what percent though. So what percent of the students surveyed saw 10 through 14 movies during the break? So first of all, it looks like the size of that bar here is 90. However, that doesn't mean it's 90%. That just means there's 90 students, right? The frequency or 90 students saw that. To find a percentage, we need to do 90, but then we need to divide that by the total number here of students. And sometimes they're kind of nice and they give us that number. Here, I don't see it anywhere. In fact, question 3, I know it got cut off on my screen here, but question 3 actually asks the same thing. It says, what were the total number of students? So you actually technically need to figure out question 3, which is down here actually, to figure out how to figure out question 2. Okay, so question 3 says, what's the total number? So for that, you have to add up all the bars here. So 45 for the first one, 60 for the next one, 90 for that one, 70 over there, and 35 over there. If you do it right, I believe you get 300. So this total over here, we would say here is 300. Okay, so now to find the percentage, you would do 90 divided by 300, and it should come to 0.3. Now, I guess that would be the decimal. Now, remember to change a decimal to a percentage. You just need to multiply that by 100, and you should get that it's 30%. And so that would be the answer here for question number 2. That would go in that blank. Lastly, here's a few comments just about getting started with Friday's assignment. Friday's assignment is going to look a little different. Here you're going to actually find your own graph, either on the internet or maybe on a magazine or article or something. And you're going to, of course, save the picture or maybe take the picture if it's in a magazine and upload it into Canvas. If you have problems, once again, you can always email it to me. But what you're going to do is you're going to upload it into Canvas and you're going to basically do kind of a conclusion, do some analysis of the graph, kind of what the graph tells you and things like that. But to find a graph just kind of on the internet, here's an easy way to do it. I would just really search something that interests you. So here you'll see a picture of me. I like cats sometimes anyways. But I like cats. Let's say I like cats. So I'm going to do a Google search here for cats or cat. And then you can then put in the different type of graph that you want. So this is a Google search I'm doing images, of course. And then so I put in circle graph. You'll notice here there's all sorts of examples of circle graphs. Some might be better than others, so don't just pick the first one and go with it. Maybe look over a few of them, find one that's kind of interesting to you and you think kind of fits with what we've been doing in class. And then you could do that, or you could backspace that and do cat, and then maybe do a line graph. Or you could backspace that and do cat and do bar graph, or even cat and then histogram, right? So you can pick kind of like, and just do one of them, but maybe pick which your favorite graph is, and then pick a topic or that you like, and then Google search that. And that's a good way to get started for the assignment there for Friday.